Hi everyone, this is LeetCode problem number 334, increasing triplet sequence. Also, this is 8th problem in our LeetCode 75 series. So, what is being asked in this question is that we have to return true if we are able to find triplets such that I is less than j and j is less than k, and also their values follow the same rule, which is like nums of I should be less than nums of j and it should be less than nums of k. Okay, so now one approach that comes to my mind is the simple brute force approach, right? We will assign this I and then we'll assign this j and then we'll assign this k and then we'll keep on increasing k and then again we'll do the iterations, but the time complexity of that would be O of n cube, right? But in this questions the time complexity that they have asked is O of n, right? They want us to solve this question in O of n. So this approach is something that we cannot follow. Now what we can do is that we can assign the so we can assign the largest number like to my first num and then the second num, and if my third num is obviously greater than them, then we know that that's a true case. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that we will iterate through the array. So let's say this is the array and we are iterating through it. I'm gonna call this my n. So let's say when my n is equals to 1, I'm gonna say my first number and my second number. Now I'll try to find the smallest first number, right? So I'm gonna say if my first, initially I can assign both my first num and second num to the int max. Now if my first is less than int max, like my current n, if it is less than int max, then I'll assign this. Okay, now if my second is less, then I'll move my n. Okay, this was 0, let's say, 0, and then it became 1. Now at like array of n we have 2. Now is my 2 less than first? No, it is not. Is my 2 less than second? Second was initialized to int max. Yes, it is obviously less than int max, so I can assign this. Now what I can do, I can find like n which is greater than both of them, right? So if my num is not less than this first, and if my n is not less than this, then I can return true, right? That means I have found a triplet subsequence. So basically if I just write the code here, what we are trying to check is that if my n is less than or equal to first num, we'll assign our first num to that because we are trying to find the smallest one, right? First num would be equal to n. Else if my n is less than or equal to second num, so here I'm assigning the second smallest value. Let me just try writing it. Second num, I can assign my second num equals to this. Now else I can return true, right? Else return true. Okay, so like if my number is not so first and second will always be in like increasing order, and if we are able to find another number which is not smaller than both of them, then obviously we can return true. That means we have found an increasing subsequence. Okay, so now let's try it for this and then we can do the dry run for the last one. So now let's say here my n is this, my n is 0, and I know my first num, let me just write first num, it was int max. Is 5 less than int max? Yes, it is, so I'm gonna assign it 5. Okay, then my n will move here Now, is my 4 less than 5? Yes, it is. Then it will move here. It's my 3 less than first num? Yes, it is. Then it will move here. Is my first num less than 3? Yes, it is. Then again it will move here. Is my first num less than this? Yes. Since you saw that we are trying to keep assigning the smallest value to the first num, my first num is like, because this entire array was in decreasing order, my first num kept getting updated and we could just return false because we were not able to find the increasing triplet subsequence. Okay, now coming to another example, we'll try to do the dry run in this table. This is 0 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, let me just write 0 1 2 3 4 5. So let's say I'm at 0th index. Is my first num less than 2? Is my first num, which is, so my n is here. Now, is my n less than first num? So we know that first num we had initialized to int max. Is my 2 less than int max? Yes, I'm gonna assign it this. Okay, now my n will move, and then what we're gonna say, is my 1 less than first num? Yes, it is. So my first num will get, okay, so I was here, so my first num will get updated to 1. Okay, now I will come here. Okay, now my n is 2. Now my 5, is it less than first num? No, it is not. Okay, now is it less than second num? We know second num is still at int max, so second num is still at int max. So I can just write their initial values as int max. Here also it was int max. Okay, so now here my first num was not, 5 was not less than 1, so it remains as it is. Now my second num, like, which is 5, is my 5 less than int max? Yes, it is. So my second num will be assigned to that. Okay, now you can see that we have find two numbers in increasing order, right? Like, we have first num and we have second num. Now we move to index 3. Now, is 0 less than first num? Yes, it is. So my first num will be assigned to 0. Okay, now again we will move. Okay, now, okay, this remains 5. Is my 4 less than first num? No, it is not. Is my 4 less than second num? Yes, it is. So I'm gonna assign it this. Now coming to indices 5. Is my 6 less than 0? No, it is not. Is my 6 less than 4? No, it is not. So my 0 and 4 remains as it is. And since x is greater than both the numbers, that means yes, I have found my subsequence and I can return true, right? And we know that 0, 4 and 6 are in increasing order, and we can also see that I is less than j is less than k. Okay, so yeah, this is the explanation for this problem. Let's try to code it. We will assign first num and second num to the int of max, like we had discussed in the solution. Int max, let me just do that. Int second num, let me just write second num is equals to int max. Now what we are going to do is that we will iterate through the array which is given. So for every integer in nums, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna assign the smallest value to the first num. So I'm gonna say if n is less than or equal to first num, I will update my first num to n. Else if my n is less than or equal to second num, then I'm gonna update my second num to n. Okay, and like if at all it's both of them are not, let's say I come across an integer which is both greater than the first num and greater than the second num, that means I have found an increasing triplet, so I'll return true. And or else if I'm not able to return true in this, that means I was not able to find any of such subsequence. In that case, I'm gonna return false. Now let's try running it. All the test cases are passing. Let's try submitting it. Okay, so it's working fine. Thank you everyone for watching.